December 15th, 2025, hearing, 5 o'clock. I hereby call this public hearing to order on today, December 15th, 2025, at 5 o'clock. The purpose of this public hearing is to provide information and answer questions on regarding the proposed fiscal year 2026 budget for Union County. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Kay Wilcox, our finance director.
Thank you, Commissioner Collins. I have quite a long presentation. I'm going to move through it fairly quickly. Each of the slides has a number. If you have a question on a specific slide, please take note of the number, and that way we can go back to that for me to answer any questions that you might have. So what we're going to cover tonight is what the county used, the basis of accounting, the cash account structure, the financial account management, budgeting basis and methodology, the budgeting process, which is set out by the Georgia Code, funds and structures, departments, and then preliminary budget details. Some of this we covered in an earlier meeting, so again, I'll just go through it quickly. So for the basis of accounting, the county uses a modified accrual, which is unique to state and local governments, and is unlike the accrual basis or the cash basis. Expenditures are recognized when they're incurred, revenues when they are measurable. And usually that's within 60 or 90 days of when we expect collection. So for the cash account structure, the county has moved to a pooling structure, which is different than previous years. So this pooling structure allows for all funds to be in one cash account. This cash account is then divided by funds, and our accounting system allows for that. But it allows all the cash, or almost all the cash, to be in one fund. And what this does is it gives us a greater visibility to see what's there for control. It optimizes liquidity, so it puts all the cash in one place to allow for investment, and that allows us to take advantage of economies of scale. So it allows us to take the monies that are all in one account, invest those with other counties in investment funds, and earn interest and dividends on those. So financial account management, we maintain multiple financial accounts in local institutions. The pooled cash account, health insurance claims, and payroll are in and out accounts. So we issue payroll checks from this account, we transfer money into payroll. Once the payroll check's cleared, it's down to virtually zero, and the same is true for health insurance claims. SPLOST to ARPA accounts are all capital funds accounts that are required to remain separate. And then economic development is a separate checking account based on the need for bonds, if the development authority needs anything to prove up, then they have their own account. And I had a question about this before. So we also maintain 2 investment accounts. These are state of Georgia accounts. They are pooled accounts that are offered by the county, that are offered by the state to Georgia entities within Georgia, counties, school districts. The primary investment objectives are safety of capital, liquidity, yield, and then diversification. with a primary emphasis on safety of capital. Fitch, who rates, is a credit rating agency, gives the Georgia Fund 1 its highest rating. If you have any questions about this, the Office of the State Treasurer website is the place to go. They also have participant updates. Now, the basis of budgeting. So the state of Georgia requires that the budget be balanced. The amount of revenues have to equal the amount of expenditures. We budget and account for all of the funds we're going to talk about on a basis of generally accepted accounting principles. Now, the budgeting methodology changed this year. Primarily, up until just recently, most budgeting was done on an incremental basis. You took last year's amount, you increased that by some percentage for different departments or different line items, and that gave you next year's budget. It's convenient and it worked. And it worked especially before there were accounting systems that would allow for more difficult budgeting. What priority-based budgeting is, it starts with a clean slate from an existing model. This is the first year we did it. It's about a 3-year process. We started with the model, the incremental model that was used. Department heads were given that. We met with each of the department heads and we evaluated each line item in every budget. So then we go into the budgetary process, the preparation. This is where department heads, elected officials fill out their budget request. And then it's reviewed by the commissioner. We talk about it. And then we present it to the public. Adoption, which will occur later this month. And a point I want to make is that what we're talking about tonight is the preliminary budget. It is not the adopted budget. The adopted budget will most certainly have changes to it. The amounts will not change, the total amounts, but the amounts within those. This is because I was out of the office for 2 weeks, a family emergency, so I didn't get a chance to go over the budgets with the department heads one final time. So we will continue to do that, and we will look at that. And so the budget will be, there will be differences in the adopted budget. Then the execution of the budget is, once that budget is put into place, January 1, department heads are working off of that budget. I'm reviewing the budget, as are the county manager and the commissioner, and we are looking at it on a month-to-month basis to address any issues that come up. And then the final step in the process is the audit. We have an audit for 2025 starting in a couple of months, when the auditors come in and look over what we've done to ensure that we are in compliance. So we talked about funds and structures before. So we have different funds based on what the state of Georgia requires. General government includes operations and economic development. Special revenue funds are both restricted and unrestricted. Unrestricted special revenue funds, 911 and law library. That means that monies coming into these funds are set outside of the operations budget. And then we have enterprise budgets, which for us is a golf course, solid waste, and restaurant, and then capital project budgets, which I mentioned before. The two ARPAs, SPLOST, GTIP, and LMIC, which are state grants for roads and bridges. Then within these, we've looked at this before, we have departments. You'll notice that there are constitutional offices are marked here, as are those that are mandated by the state. If the state mandates it, we are required to fund it reasonably. We don't have an option in doing that. So here you see judicial administration is almost entirely mandated. Public safety, again, animal control, EMA, coroner, courthouse, and the sheriff are mandated by the state. Public works, so for us, for Union County, road maintenance, solid waste, and then transportation. Health and welfare would be the health department, welfare, the senior citizen center, and local victims assistance, and I'll explain these more later on. And then we have recreation, and all of the groups, all of the breakdown of departments within the recreation department. And then finally, housing and development, which is economic development and building inspections. So when we look at what the state mandates, 65.2% of our budget is mandated by the state of Georgia. We do not have an option. These are not discretionary funds. The discretionary amount is 33.3%. Agreements with other agencies would be with the Chamber of Commerce. We have an agreement to fund them. The state requires that we do that if we have hotel motel tax. So that is 1.5%. When we look at our operations budget, we see that primarily 42%, almost 42%, is public safety. This is an average across the state. General administration is 20%. Public works is at 18.5%. And then you have judicial administration, housing development, recreation, and then health and welfare is right over 1% of the budget. Now, if we look at the breakdown here, this is the 20% slice for general administration. So if we look at 100% of 20%, this is how that money is spent. So you see general administration here is 14%, and then you can go around and look at the various departments and how each of them, the percentage that each of them require of that 20% of the budget. Now it's important to note a couple things here. The tax assessor, that budget went up substantially for a couple of reasons. One, the assessment, GMAS assessment that was done, that's done each year, that was charged to general administration or the commissioner's office. That's been moved into the tax assessor's office. So this is the breakdown of everything that is funded through general operations. Now, if we look at public safety, and this is their slice, we look at sheriff at 38%, jail, emergency management, 911, courthouse coroner, and animal control. Fire station 1, which is Annex 1 to 13, these are for the upkeep of those fire stations. And if you have any questions about that, Chief Dyer will answer those for you later. So this is public safety. Sorry. Now, we're going to get into the particulars of the budget, and I'm going to bring attention to specific areas that I've had questions about, or that I've received questions about, and offer some explanation for those. So charges for services, if you notice, that has doubled. Operating transfers from other funds, $950,000. Reimbursements, about $1.3 million in reimbursements. And then taxes. Taxes are showing an increase of $4 million. And I am going to show you what is now included in that tax, in those taxes. So we start with charges for services. The recreation budget, 2025 and prior, was not included in the general government budget. It was considered an enterprise fund. What we have done is we broke down the enterprise fund, so now the golf course and the restaurant are separate enterprise funds. Recreation is not an enterprise fund. So these additional revenues that you're seeing are revenues that were not shown before. And I'll explain to you how they were set out in the 2025 budget later on. But it's important to note that these are now being shown in the general budget when they were not before. Then operating transfers from other funds. Solid waste, short-term rental, 911, and then various other restricted funds all have the capability to transfer money to the general fund. Solid waste operates and earns more revenue than it has expenses. That additional revenue goes into the general fund. The same is true for short-term rentals. The expense of operating short-term rentals, licensing and enforcement is $344,000 less than the revenue it brings in. Same is true for the 911 fund. And then we get various administrative fees from grants that we receive. So that is operating transfers from other funds. Reimbursements. We receive reimbursements, and those are shown as revenues. Oil and gas reimbursements. If you notice, the hospital and the city of Blairsville show expenses in our budget for gas and oil that they then reimburse us for those expenses. BSI is our health insurance carrier. Administrator, actually, we are self-insured. We have a point where the county pays all of the claims up to a certain point per employee. If an employee goes over that maximum, we are then reimbursed by a reinsurer. And we have budgeted $850,000 for that. Private road acceptance. If citizens live on a road that they want to turn over to the county may go in and spend money to do that. The citizens are required to reimburse us for that. And then we receive miscellaneous grant reimbursements. And then other county reimbursements would be, we're in a district with White County, Towns County, Lumpkin County. So there is money that goes back and forth. So we may at times receive reimbursements for that. So that's the $1.3 million. And then taxes. So there's an additional $4 million showing in taxes. And I have included items in taxes that apparently were not included before. Now, I cannot explain why they were or were not included. But according to the Georgia Uniform Standard accounts, chart of accounts, this is how they should be allocated. So you can see tax commissions, interest, penalties and interest. The federal government makes payments to us in lieu of taxes, as does the TVA. So those are included. So that is an explanation of the additional funds for taxes this year that were not, or may have been in different categories last year. Before we start talking about expenses, you are going to notice the expenses for each department have gone up substantially. And that is because in 2025 and before, health insurance was paid from a separate fund. It was reported in Fund 601, an internal service fund, and you'll see this later as $3 million. That money has been recalculated based on the cost for the employees in each department and is allocated now in the general budget to those departments. The larger the department, the more increase you will see. The more employees that a department has, the more it costs to insure and provide employee benefits. So it's important to note as we go through that these budgets are not increased for other reasons, although there may be some increases. But the group health insurance benefits have made a big difference in the general operating budget. Now, it is perfectly legal to do it in an internal service fund the way it had been done before, but the commissioner is seeking transparency. We felt that this is the way to be most transparent rather than to have it all lumped together. So total health insurance budgeted to the departments now is $4.5 million. Reimbursement from the reinsurance carrier is budgeted $850. As those come in, they will be applied back to the departments. And they generally come in the year after they're spent. So the total redistributed health care costs are $3.7 million. added to the general budget. That was not the operations budget, that was not there before. So then we look at general government expenditures. Now what you'll notice here is that in 2025, administration was lumped together. It has now been divided into executive, finance, and then general administration. Festivals, which was not budgeted before, had been in the road and fire department budgets. We have set that out. And then the tax assessor, as I mentioned earlier, their budget increased dramatically based on GMAS, as well as health insurance. And then the law from 2025 that was here would be for legal professional fees. That has been broken down to the departments that use those services. Public safety, and you should have received a line item budget that sets out the expenditures for each of these numbers, these departmental numbers that you see here. Public Works. So it was broken down this way in 2025. Solid waste and recycling, from my understanding, was when, before the county had, we were able to shred our own documents. We had to pay to have that done. And now our transfer station is able to do that for us, so there's not a cost associated with it. Health and welfare. The Civic Center, Community Center, again, that was lumped in with recreation. So that is something that has not been included before. Health Department, Senior Center, welfare, again, these are mandated expenses. Indigent burial and then transportation. Now, in the general budget in 2025, there was a line item, operating transfers to other funds, as well as the library, and then recreation was at $37,000. That has now been broken down into the departments within recreation. Housing development expenditures, building inspection, economic development. This amount includes, what would be the strategic plan?
Yeah, the strategic plan and also GIC expenses that were not allocated last year.
So the strategic plan that the University of Georgia is undertaking, we have a grant for a portion of that, 50%?
Yes.
So we have a portion of that, so that will be refunded to us as well, but it is budgeted here for 2026. Now we have the special revenue funds. These have been broken down where in the past they were reported together. And I'm going to go over these. So the 911 and law library, again, are unrestricted funds. They are used to pay for the expenses for the dispatch. And then we are budgeting, we are projecting $195,000 above the expenses to go back into the general fund. The law library is funded by the court fines and forfeitures, a portion of that. All those expenses then go directly to the law library for upkeep and updates. Then we look at restricted funds that are a portion restricted and a portion are unrestricted. Multiple grants come in from various grants, federal, state, and private grants. $70,000 goes back into the operations budget, and then the other goes for specific purposes set out by the grant and have to be spent that way. Hotel motel tax funds, short-term rental tax revenues, fund this. $350,000 of this goes to the Chamber of Commerce, which is mandated by the state from the hotel motel tax funds, and $25,000 to the Georgia Department of Natural Resources for Vogel State Park. And then there are $375,000 over and above that goes back into the general fund. I am mentioning this because I have had quite a few questions about the budget of the special revenue funds being separate and apart from the operations budget. And that is true. But they are commingled in situations like this. So this $70,000 from Georgia DOT for the transportation department, we pay those expenses. They give us that money back. So that is included, that $70,000 as a revenue into the general fund. And then we look at the others. The opioid settlement. A settlement between drug companies and drug stores. The federal government reached. We get a $4,000 administrative fee per year. The remainder of that goes as grants to drug treatment programs. Accountability Court is for the entire Onoda district. It's funded by participant fees, grants, and the various district counties. We receive a $5,000 administrative fee. The remainder of that budget stays separate and apart and funds the Accountability Court. Drug abuse and treatment, the same situation. Victims assistance, we get an administrative fee. So again, these amounts are going back into the general budget. The Ed Webster Fund is funded by private donations. All the funds expended from this go back into the general budget as registration fees. Sports registration fees. So then we have, these are restricted funds. So inmate welfare and jail funds are with the sheriff's office. Income from the commissary is used or must be used for supplies and materials related to inmate welfare. And then juvenile court, superior court fines, and is used for supplies and materials. So then we have enterprise funds. You will notice the large difference between 2025 and 2026. That $4 million was the recreation budget that you saw earlier. It was included as an enterprise fund. And again, we have split those out so it's no longer there. But that is $4 million that was in the 2025 budget for enterprise funds that is now $3 million That 4 million has moved into the general fund budget. So then we have the golf course. So there are fees, pro shop sales that pay the golf course expenses. Same is true for the restaurant. Same is true for solid waste. And that should not be capital projects, that should be capital waste, solid waste expenses. And then the revenue over and above expenses is $400,000 back into the general fund. Then we look at capital projects. In 2025, it was shown as $7 million. For 2026, we have the ARPA, the broadband expansion, as well as the water system resilience improvements. These are federal funds that were distributed during COVID through the American Rescue Plan Act. So if we look at ARPA, it's a federal government grant. It comes through us and directly to Coosa Water. The same is true for broadband. It goes directly to Windstream to pay for those improvements. And then we have SPLOST and the state grants. Those pay for capital projects. So as I close, I want to try to explain the differences. This is the 2025 budget. The differences that I have talked about between the 2025 and 2026 budgets. So you see here the total revenues and expenses were $28 million. There was a budget amendment for 2025 for approximately $4 million. So we add that to the budget amount. These operating transfers are actually deducted because now in 2026, those operating transfers went out, but the recreation budgets came in. So we subtract this since it was an expense. The internal revenue, the internal service fund, which was health care that we talked about, that is moved from internal service into general budget. And then enterprise funds. So there were $4,000 additional in enterprise funds for 2025 that are not there in 2026. That has been moved into the general operating budget. Which, given those changes, in 2025, the true budget amount was somewhere in the neighborhood of $35 million. So if we look at the budget amendment, again, to be transparent, this is something that we are trying to move away from. As you can see, the past 5 years, there has been a budget amendment, and it has risen steadily. Now, when you look at our form of accounting, and you look at the accrual method, there may certainly still be budget amendments based on fixed assets and other things. But these budget amendments are added directly to the annual budgets. So a lot of information in a little bit of time, probably not as little as you would have liked. But I am here to answer questions. We have our department heads are here if there are any specific questions about specific departments. So, any questions? Yes, ma'am. There's a mic here, I think.
There's actually 2 microphones. The small one is for Facebook Live so that they can hear you out there in Facebook world. And the other one is for this room.
So which one do they will need to use?
Both.
They need to use both?
Is this on?
Yeah. Hey, Mr. Lively.
My name is Roy Lively, and I have a question regarding the tax assessor's office.
Yes, sir.
I noticed you broke out the GMAS fees for next year. That's an increase of $40,000 over the original contract. I don't expect you to know that, but it is. My question is, does this include the per diem charge that GMAS has billed the county ever since 2013? They bill us $750 a day to come to the BOE meetings. And then if they go to court, they bill us $1,000. Now that was in the original contract. I cannot tell you that that's in the contract that was renewed last year and this year because I have not asked for that yet. And so do you know if that legal fee is included in their bottom line?
At those per diems?
Yeah.
I do not. The tax assessor is not here, but that is something that I can contact you. I can check on that and let you know.
Okay.
I'll follow up with you on that.
One other, on your line items, if I'm reading it correctly, you have $18,000 for in this Board of Assessors. Can you explain what that is? To me, the Assessors Board is voluntary.
I cannot. Is there anyone here that could, Lee, do you have any information on that?
I know the people on the Board of Equalization are paid,
No, this is something different.
but he's asking for the Board of Assessors,
Assessors.
which is different.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is another one I'll have to follow up on.
Okay. The Board of Assessors receives a small payment for attending each meeting.
Do they?
Yeah,
And there are 3 members to that, to the
Yes.
Board of Assessors?
yeah.
And the Chief Assessor being one of the board members.
Now, I don't know specifically about individuals, but yes, they are supposed to get paid.
2 outside, so round numbers, we're paying $1,500 a month for people to appear at the Board of Assessors meeting.
So you've got, these are budgeted amounts. So they're paid how much per meeting? They're each paid $5,000 a year. Okay, so there you go, there's your answer, $5,000 a year each.
And then any expenses, you know, the additional $3,000.
Okay. I guess the legal fee is probably one of the big ones in the past 2 years. The county spent $64,000 on 2 different attorneys. But I can't ask you to answer that, why we have 2, but that's what we spent over the past 2 years, according to information that I've been given.
Yeah, one of there's 2 different attorneys,
Yeah.
because one does residential and one does commercial.
Yeah, okay.
So that's the difference in the different attorneys.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
And I will follow up with you on that. Yes, sir.
My turn.
You want to be on Facebook Live right there. And then right here for us.
Try that.
Yes, sir.
Because I got lots of things to talk about. I printed out what you have on the website for the budget. The only numbers in that book are from the general fund. The other funds are not included in that book. The budget of Union County, which is a single financial entity, is a single budget. It is not only the general fund budget, it is the sum total of all of the funds, okay? And it needs to be shown that way. Now, when you start transferring between funds, it shows as though it were expenses to one fund and revenue to another fund. That's just moving money between funds of a financial institution, which is neither a expense or a revenue. Okay? Revenue to the entity is that money which increases the assets of the county. Expenses are money that decrease the assets of the county. And transferring excess money from the E911 account back into another fund is not a expense, nor is it a revenue. Okay, so you're misleading everyone with that.
Can I answer that?
Yes, ma'am.
It is done according to the state of Georgia. This is the way they require it to be done, is that the funds are maintained separately, money is transferred, there is a special department number used for those transfers, and they show as revenue and expenses.
And, well, let's take another example, okay? You show this year about $12.25 million for broadband coming out of the American Rescue Plan. And it appears as a revenue and then an expense of $12.25 million. Now, in 2023, we showed a revenue of $10 million from the American Rescue Plan and $10 million expended. In 24, we showed $7 million of American Rescue Plan money as revenue and $7 million expended. Now we're showing between the two, the broadband and the water, $15 million revenue and expenses. Are you implying that we have received a total of $32 million from the American Rescue Plan over the past 4 years?
I can tell you that.
Or are we just taking $15 million out of a fund that had $17 million back in 23 and 24 put into the fund?
I can tell you right off the top of my head, the broadband expansion was a $23 million project. Now, when you're talking about the numbers for 23, 24, and 25, you are talking about budgeted figures. Now, as with any construction project, we would expect it to be completed in a year, and there are times that it extends beyond that.
Absolutely.
And that is shown in the audit when you see the actual expenses. But those monies, there was actually an addition to the broadband. They applied for additional funding and received that. Now, we don't have that money. We are granted that money based on reports from either CUSA or Windstream as to their progress. And then the federal government funds those, and then we send that to CUSA or Windstream.
What it boils down to, and this is another thing that I think is absolutely imperative that the county starts to do, We have a budget given to us in November, December every year. We never see the actuals reported that in the same accounts as the budget is made, okay? The only way we ever see actuals is if we request from the ORR, through an ORR, and get the accounting report from, I can't remember the name of the company that does it, from Mr. Pilgrim, okay? And it doesn't even show the same accounts as are shown in the budget, okay? The accounts are somewhat different, they don't line up. And it becomes, we don't see then what the final actuals are. Okay. And what you're saying is in, say, the 23, where there are 20 million or $10 million shown as expected revenue and $10 million, I believe what probably happened is a lot less than $10 million was spent that year. Okay, and there was actually a fund established. Maybe we got 10 million, we spent 3 million, and at the end of the year we had, what, 7 million unexpended.
And that's not the way that works. So we don't get those funds
Okay,
until CUSA or Windstream sends in their progress reports with the cost of labor, equipment, and supplies. They send that to the federal government. Then the federal government funds that, and then we send that directly to them. So it is not funded until those companies expend it.
and that's fine, but we as citizens don't have any idea what is actually going on. Okay, you report numbers like this year, what, 12.25 million as revenue and expenses. I don't have any idea what we've actually spent, okay, because it was never reported to us. Is that not a true statement?
Well, I don't know what was reported in years past. All I know is that moving forward,
The only thing that we as citizens ever see is the budget that we're seeing here today. We see the setting of the millage rate, okay? And we made, Mr. Pilgrim comes and gives a short response when in June relative to the audit report. And that's all we see. We never get anything actually presented which lines up with the budget. Okay? So that we can see, you said this budget is you're establishing now, and it would be nice at the end of the year to see how close we came. All right? Did we really spend this, or did we go over budget and such? What were the actuals? That's the only way we as citizens can evaluate what's happening. Okay? We need to start getting that feedback from the county. Okay? Rather than having to make an ORR request to get the report and then trying to analyze the report, because it isn't at all, doesn't at all really match the way it is presented to us as the budget. Okay, there are all kinds of questions, and I'll hand you what my printout here. You talked about, for example, you showed the distribution on the BSI. Okay, that was one question I had. Okay, I had no idea until what you presented here as to how much you actually distributed. I knew that the expense was 3 million last year. There was at least 3 million budgeted last year. I had no idea until what you presented here tonight, because it's in all of the various salary areas. All right. Now, for example,
It's also shown in the line item budget, though.
yeah, which I've been working on for the past few days once I finally got it. Okay. And you just blew my train of thought. And you have established 850,000 as the income. Okay.
The
Last
reimbursement.
year, yeah, the last year was 300,000 is what they, where did that change come from? Okay.
I can answer that.
Yeah, but we shouldn't have to ask all those questions. Why did the Sheriff's Department go from 4 million to 6 million? Now, I did pick up a little over $1 million of that is relative to the BSI, okay? But there's still an additional $1 million increase in the sheriff's budget, okay? When I hand you the new stuff that I've generated since I've gotten the breakdowns, I've got 25 questions, some of which are probably easy to answer. And like I say, I picked up a few of them here. But those are the things that I believe we as citizens should be asking and getting the answers, not just you saying, oh, here are the numbers. Okay. We need to understand why those numbers and why the changes. Okay.
Well, and if I could just address that.
Yeah.
So it's a new administration. We have started operating under the assumption that we are going to be transparent to the public. We cannot account for what was done last year or the prior years, but moving forward, we intend to do everything that we can to be as transparent as possible. The accounting system is not easy to understand, and we're trying to break it down. I mean, it's certainly not rocket science, but it's different than even standard accounting. So we are working towards transparency. What has happened before, we have no control over, but moving forward, we are doing our very best to be as transparent as possible, because that's what the commissioner has demanded that we do.
Other types of things that I can talk about. Let's take the golf course. Okay, the budget and I realize you don't have control of what happened in 25, but it's something that we were told as citizens. Here's the situation with the golf course in 25, and it had the budget in 25 showed about $1 million loss for the golf course. Your budget this year shows it breaking even. Okay. And additionally, it breaks even by the income from the golf course going way down from what it was estimated at for 25, and the expenses, I think, going up a little bit. Okay, it doesn't make any sense how we could have less income on the golf course.
More expensive.
And the disappearance of $1 million loss. Okay, it just, those kinds of numbers don't make any sense, and I think they need to be explained to us.
And I don't disagree with you.
And the same way with the restaurant. Okay, I don't know what's right or wrong. Okay, it's just there are lots of numbers that don't make sense. And I think we as citizens need rational explanations. I was hoping, I understand your situation here, where we plan to have this meeting on the 2nd. And had that happen, and with you being available, I had a chance to sit down with you and get some of these things answered. All of a sudden, it's been pushed back to the 15th, and we're talking about trying to, come on, what's the word? On the 17th, to adopt.
It's actually set to be adopted on the 22nd, not the 17th.
Oh, okay. I was guessing because of the, figured it'd be moved forward because of the holiday.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so maybe between now and then, you and I can sit down and come up with some answers to these things.
Well, and I am happy to address anything that I have done and then moving forward.
Yeah.
I cannot speak to $1 million loss for the golf course. I'm not sure how anyone could calculate that, to be perfectly honest, because it was all separate and apart. And I'm not here to cast aspersions. I'm not here to do any of that. I just don't know what I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not either. I'm just trying to get numbers that I can understand and that make sense, okay? And we need to be able to look at the past too, okay? We can't ignore it, okay?
No, I agree with you, Mr. Peterson. However, what I am working from for past years is not very detailed. I am making assumptions about what happened, which I'm not going to share here because they are just my assumptions. But there is no way for me to answer anything about the golf course. All of that was done separate and apart from the general government accounting. Why it was done that way, I can't answer.
Okay. Well,
But we are committed to having those funds answer for their budget to break even and moving forward to be accountable.
let's plan between now and the 22nd to have some sit-downs, you and I, and go over a few of these things.
Well, again, for those people that don't know, my husband was in an accident on November 22nd, had surgery on the 23rd. He was in the hospital for 10 days. He is still under home care. My time is very limited until he is able to care for himself, so I will do the very best I can.
Okay. And I'm sorry to hear that. I knew that you had a personal situation. I have no idea what it was. So, I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, thank you.
Hopefully, still that we can spend some time and resolve some of these questions.
Well, and if it's not before the 22nd, I mean, if you will submit those to me in writing, it would be much easier for the finance department as a whole to be able to answer those, because there's a team of us.
Well, I'm assuming you saw what I presented. I gave
Yes, I did see
weeks
it,
ago,
but I haven't had time to
okay.
study it.
And I'll give you another one here tonight.
All right.
Because I've added to it since I finally got the breakdown here last Wednesday. Okay. All right?
All right, thank you. Well, how are you?
Very good.
Nice to put a face to the,
Yes, thank you for your help last week. Understanding some of these numbers. The numbers that were published, just so I understand, in the paper as a proposed budget, the 33,630, this is now the 33,495, correct?
yes,
Okay. All right. This is what is typically referred to as general government, correct?
the 33,494.
To hammer home this gentleman's point, the special funds that were detailed total some roughly $33 million as well. Those are all budgeted to occur in fiscal year 2026, isn't that correct?
That is correct. However, like I mentioned, there's a lot of intermingling of funds.
Right. But if things go as budgeted, this is only roughly half of the potential expenditure that the county will see in 2026 if the various other funds occur in 2026 as well. Okay.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you for confirming that. My next question is lost. So the lost and the SPLOST is the intergovernmental sharing agreement between the city of Blairsville and Union County the same for those two taxes, or is it different?
They're different. So lost is a 20-80 split, with the city getting 20, us getting 80. I am correct on those numbers, right, Lee?
I believe so.
Yeah, so that was just renegotiated in 2022.
And that's lost.
That is lost.
2018.
I'm sorry?
2018.
Yes, 2080. They renegotiate that amount every 10 years.
Okay.
So, and it's been 2080, I believe, since the beginning. I don't think it's been changed. And then SPLOST is it a specific amount or is it a percentage? Is it 8.5? Is it 8.5? Yeah. Yeah, so it's 8.5.
Loss,
Oh,
we would have kept 99% of the county.
But that's neither here nor there.
I know it.
yeah. Yeah. So 8.5% of SPLOST
Okay, so
goes to the
significantly
city.
less
Yes,
to Blairsville on the
Yes.
SPLOST.
yes,
Okay.
correct.
I was looking at the detail of the SPLOST, of the $7,425,000, and I had asked previously about a list of potential projects slated for 2026. Does the county have a list of capital projects, road, bridges, infrastructure,
I am sure
Yes,
that Pam
Pam does.
Hawkins has a
that would
list,
be available?
and I
Yes.
can get that for you.
I don't need to bother you if there's someone else I can.
Well, when I say I mean we can make that happen.
I know this lady's next talking about that.
Yes.
Okay. Now, SPLOST is set to expire at year-end 2026, is that right?
Not year end.
Not year-end?
Not year end. So it would be April of 27, or maybe March of 27.
Okay.
Around in
So
there.
there's a vote coming up for either renewal or not
Correct, yes.
in first quarter or thereabouts, 2026.
Is it gonna be, what did you, is that when it's gonna be? In the primary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This item that I see in SPLOST of $3,941,000 public safety, I don't see a line item of that, and I can in my head understand that's a roll-up of various things, fire department, sheriff,
ideas?
so on, so on, so on.
I didn't, re-ask the question, I'm sorry.
The section that deals with SPLOST, there's a designation of $3,941,000 for public safety and $2,994,000 for roads, bridges, etc. So my question is, what public safety is being funded that's not part of general government?
Oh,
the new
SPLOST?
So like, what stuff is funded out of SPLOST for public safety?
Yes.
Would y'all like to, there you go. Yeah.
We had just spent $1,172,000 on new SCBA's, air packs that the fire department uses. That come out of SPLOST. But we're building a new 911 center. That will come out of SPLOST. That's $3.8 million for a new building that's going to be there. Another $1.2 million of that money will be used for all the equipment that goes into the 911 center, including the radios, the telephones, all of the software that they have to have, all the furnishings for all that stuff. So that's just right off the top of my head, just for my departments, not to mention the sheriff's department, and any kind of additional safety equipment that we may need, fire engines that we may need. A fire engine today costs $750,000, and we have to replace those every 10 or 15 years. We have 22 of them. So that's a lot of money that we have to spend there.
Yeah, well, that's helpful. I think I get it, the gist of it. But if there was a list of potential expenditures more specifically SPOS in 2026 that would be available, of which some of those things would be on there, that would be helpful for me as a voter, taxpayer to understand.
Okay,
Thank you again for your help.
you're very welcome.
My name is Christy Shirky, and one thing I want to point out is his point is well taken. I understand you have a big detailed budget to do, but part of transparency, and that's I think more than just you doing it, it's the commissioner and the other ones that work on it, is how do you turn that into something that most everyday residents understand. And for example, I haven't gone through the whole, every single account, but what I did go through or review was the 2025 to 2026 budget comparison. Now, if you look at that, you start trying to look at all those accounts and figure out how they balance, that's where people are going to say, it's not saying you're not doing your job, it's just not anything many residents can understand. So for example, when I looked at the budget comparison and I saw, let's see, for 2026, miscellaneous is going up by $400,000. I wonder why.
What kind of miscellaneous?
All it says is general government budget revenue. So this was the,
Okay.
so do I start going through every single one of those line items to try and add up where we predict we're going to have 400,000 more in miscellaneous general government revenue?
So this budget is based on last year's budget, what was spent this year from January 1, or what was received, to September 30th, divided by 9, multiplied by 12, and that gives us our estimate for 2026. Then we look at whether there are any extenuating circumstances. Something came in we weren't expecting, something may come in again. But basically, we are looking at historical evidence and making an educated guess.
But if 2025 was 346,000, where are we getting the historical data to double it?
That is the budget
Right.
for 2025.
Yes, but the budget
I mean,
and
yes,
what our taxes are and what the total revenues are is pretty much what we're saying we're predicting our 2026 budget will be.
that's
correct?
right. But
Okay.
when we calculate the budget, we are taking actual expenditures and actual revenues for the first 9 months of 2025 and basing 2026 on those actual numbers.
So you're saying the 2025 actuals are actually in this comparison
I'm
are based on
telling-
9 months of 2025?
I am telling you that the 2026 budget is based on actual expenditures for the first 9 months of 2025.
Then I just have to ask, what is the value of giving this to residents to compare?
Because
If I can't figure out where that 400,000 is coming from, that's part of the budget for 2026.
well, what I'm giving you is a budget comparison.
I understand.
I cannot give you actuals for 2025 yet until after the audit. So I don't have the actuals for 2025 to give you.
And I understand that, but what I can't, I would think there must have been some trend in order to project that much more in miscellaneous general government budget revenue. I understand what you're saying, a trend, but there's nothing to tell me what the trend, which is great, double revenue. I mean, I'm fine with that. I just feel a little more comfortable if I knew where it came from.
Right, and I understand.
Okay. Then when I looked at, and he brought up revenue generating departments. And so I could see in this where it shows what the expenses again for the golf course, the restaurant, also the gun range.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
that's a newer one. And again, I guess my point to that and his point is, for example, if those aren't making money, then the goal is to look at expenses against revenue and say what can be proactively done to improve it. So next year, we're not paying more taxes because we hadn't analyzed that a little better.
Well, if you look on the revenue statement, in the detailed budget, you will see revenues attributed to the gun range.
Okay?
Those are, so revenues and
So who compares revenue against expenses for the year to see where we are?
the department heads, I do that. the
How do we
commissioner-
see that as residents? That's,
I
guess,
don't know
where-
that you ever have seen that.
Okay, so that might be something new to look at. You know, if the commissioner has a meeting and people are concerned how our management is, to kind of go over that. I don't think it's funny, I think it's important.
No, I agree with
And I'm
you.
not saying you, but there are some people that seem to be grinning like it's
Well, so
not important.
what we're trying to do is start, this is our first budget, to be transparent, to move forward so that we can provide the citizens of Union County with all the information we have. We can't control what was done before, and so I understand the confusion, but this is the first step for 2026 in moving forward in a different direction. To be able to answer to the citizens as to what, why, where, when, and how much.
Right.
That's our goal.
And I think that's some of our goals too.
And so that is our goal, to do that. So we're trying to start from a place that we can explain the budget in the beginning as we move through 2026. We plan to make available, and I don't know how often or in what format, but financial information to the citizens. That is our goal. We have not wavered from that. It has been that from the very moment I came to work.
Ms. Peggy, can I say something?
Sir.
When I took office, I was probably in the dark as much as y'all was, you know, about where this was, how it was spent there. And I looked at each department, just like farming. If you take on a new field, I usually get 1 season to produce. If it didn't produce, I would do something about it. And that's what I have done these departments, right, these departments. Brian Herbert Rich, the View, the Grill, the Horse Arena, Meat Park. I mean, you can't expect for it to, you know, a lot of this is just for the public, when you've got to furnish up for the public. But at the end of the year, each department is going to come up with numbers to see where we lost, made, or broke even. And that's going to be presented to the public. But we cannot do that until the end of 25, when we get these numbers in. So, and 24 and past, we're not worried about the past. But this is a new going on. We're trying to present this to y'all folks just as honest as we can, showing you where every dollar is spent. Each department has got to let us know where, if they go out and buy 500 cups of coffee, they got to let us know on where this money is being spent. And this miscellaneous you're talking about, a budget is just a projected amount of what it's going to cost to run the county. I mean, it's not going to be nowhere near
I mean, it may be $500,000 either way, or maybe more. It's just projecting on the year before. So when we get these final numbers in, you will see the final tally of 2025. So that way, you should be able, the numbers should line up on what is spent and what is brought in, and you'll know if the restaurant made money, lost money, and everyone, so, because before it was all in a big old pool and nobody knows where it would go. So we have divided all this out, and there's no use of harping on it right now because we ain't got 25 numbers in yet. And we don't go on 24.
And it's not a matter of harping on it, I guess. I guess the point is you're saying we'll know at the end of the year. But is your goal, for example, to have quarterly meetings to go over how they are doing this year if your goal is to manage with the department's funds better versus wait till the end of 2026 to see where we are?
I think since I took office and have been informed more than any, and I'm not throwing off on the last 20 years. I've been trying to be transparent, bring stuff to the public, and we are going to do more. But when the audit, I guess, is the final numbers, is when everything comes out and we know what's going on. You will be presented with those numbers and see what, like the horse arena, it lost money last year. I signed a contract with the Saddle Club, it made $300 this year. So what we are working to save, and they was fine with that. We are working to save the taxpayers money and still keep the same good service. And that's going to be a tax. But as far as the miscellaneous stuff, Chief Dyer may need something for the fire department that come up and we don't know nothing about. Or Sean may need something for the police department.
Yeah, but the miscellaneous I was asking about was revenues, double revenues from 2025 to 2026. I just wondered what that projection was based on. I mean, that's good.
It all was based on 24.
Well, it was based on 2025 actuals. So there was money that came in 2025 that was income that was not expected, that did not fall neatly into any of the categories, that went into miscellaneous revenue, and so we projected on to 2026.
Okay. My other question is just, and I think I sent you a question after the last meeting about the cash flow accounts. So we moved from several cash flow accounts to one, with one bank. So based on that, I don't know how much money has been merged, but is that fully insured in that account?
Yes.
Okay.
The banks are required for government funds to offer a surety to us for any amounts that we have in their institution.
Okay, that's great. And based on that, moving the money together, do you have an estimate on what you think the increased revenue will be by making that one account? And then my other question is just, since the cash flow is all combined, how do you track what goes into there?
So the fund accounting systems actually track it. We code it to specific numbers, put it into the system, and the system tracks how much money is in that fund, how much money is due that fund, or how much the fund owes to other funds. So the accounting system all accounts for that as long as it's coded properly. So we work every day, we pay bills, we code those, we get in revenue, we code those. At the end of every month, we go over those to see if anything was miscoded or put in the wrong, and then we correct that, and then we move on to the next month. I project additional, so from doing this, there will be, number one, all of the recreation funds were moved into the general account. So I move money into the investment funds or into savings or CDs as we get large amounts into the pooled cash account. Right now, property taxes are coming in. So I have been moving money And I think in the investment account now, there's $11 million. Where last year this time, there was about $6 million. So you're looking at interest and dividends on $4 million. So it is more of a timing issue and having those funds available to be able to earn interest and dividends on. It would be hard because of interest rates and the fluctuations that we're seeing and expecting. It may not increase because interest rates are going down. So I don't really have an answer to that one.
But in the monthly expense revenue budget, will that be something that will show under one account called cash flow?
No, that will show, so what happens is you earn dividends or you earn interest, and then that interest total is allocated out to all of the funds. So if I have a pooled cash account that's got 5 funds in it, one has the majority of the funds, general fund, and then I have 4 others, I allocate those dividends to each of those funds that are there. And it's done automatically in the system through general ledger entry.
Okay, thank you. I'll email any other questions I have. I think, Jennifer, you still have one email.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just one short comment, and if I look, say, at some account in '24, it had a budget of $500,000. In '25, it had a budget of $550,000, and in '26, I see $1.1 million. Don't I have the right to question that?
Well, you certainly do, and that's why.
and that's the kind of things that I'm trying to bring up, where I look at history and all of a sudden this thing jumps wildly, and I think
Well, and those are the things that.
and you may have a perfectly valid answer for it, but I've got to ask the question.
And you have every right to ask those questions, and anyone here in this office is more than willing to answer them.
Now, one other, on revenues. It shows in your budget about 11.25 million for property tax. That's the first item in the list. The third item in the list shows 800,000 for property tax from previous years. Now, my assumption is that, and Lee can maybe answer this, that 800,000 is people who didn't pay, okay? How can you put in your budget that I'm going to get the full $11 million plus 800,000 from the previous year? You're not going to get 11 million this year, okay? That's how much Lee is billing. We know that it's going to come up short. People aren't going to pay.
And generally, a county or a school is going to budget for 97% of that revenue.
Okay.
That's where they, so.
So I think there's an overstatement of the expected revenue from property tax. If you pull the whole amount plus what I'm getting, what didn't get paid last year, there's
also penalties and
something's
interest.
overstated.
There's also penalties and interest there.
Yeah.
And that is also from back taxes and that type of thing.
Practice that they're required to do a certain amount on a yearly basis, I believe. I think gun range, they've got some training courses that they're doing, looking at different things that they can do to kind of help fund it a little bit and bring it up more toward even. Of course, I don't foresee it breaking even, but it is a service, and for me to know that we have an area for our law enforcement to go and do what they need to do in training and practice means the world to me. And another thing, as far as SPLOST, I don't know that we actually have a list of things that need to be, that will be spent on in 2026. However, I do know with the SPLOST revenue sitting there, when you run into situations on a day-to-day basis, we don't expect to happen in this. For instance, the roof on this courthouse. 3 months ago, we didn't know we were going to have to replace it. We're going to have to soon because the roof's leaking. It's out to bid and we quote, and I'm going to guesstimate it being close to $1 million before the roof's finished on the building. Bridges, we've got, since we've come into office, Mr. Harrell hired me in January. We've got 4 right now that's Canada Creek's going to be replaced. We've got 3 that's out to bid now as well. And these type things, if the funds are not sitting there and state comes in, GDOT comes in and condemns one of these bridges, shuts it down. He did Fisher Field Road bridge up year and a half ago. When they condemn it, but you can't use it anymore, you got to react quick. With those SPLOST funds sitting there, they're available for us. We can go in a hurry. Whether they're not, we've got to look at it as a different situation. Thank you.
I just had one question. When was the last time the senior center had any renovation or capital improvements from SPLOST? Because that building is old.
I'm not sure. I know our maintenance department has worked on it a little bit this year. We are fixing to, we're looking at doing an expansion on the parking lot. Certain things that we are looking at, and doing, and hopefully we can do something to do some remodeling and stuff, in the future.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Sure.
All right, I want to talk about a little accountability from the last administration.
Mike, who's Mike?
Who's Mike?
Okay.
It's on.
It's on, okay. I just want to talk a little bit about accountability from the last administration. I had figured something out what was going on with the range, and I exposed it. When I did, I was harassed for 1.5 years by one of the range employees.
When you say range, you mean gun range?
Yes.
Okay.
Every Wednesday morning, he met me in front of my church because he happened to work next to where I was going to church. And he would stop me, smoke a cigarette in my face, and try to convince me to change my mind, which to me was, he was put up by our previous you-know-who. And I'm sorry, but that's racketeering. And he came just short of threatening me. You should do this. You should do that. No, I won't, and I won't change my mind. And everything I predicted happened. Everything. The folding of the club, I predicted that. So the club's done. The club can't survive. The club, there's no need for the club. And sure as heck, they folded. And the money, our money's $90,000 gone. Where? I don't know. I mean, they said where they were going to put it, but who knows? And all I know is this went on for a long time. It went on for 1.5 years personally before our church moved and finally moved somewhere else. And he was no longer there to try to intimidate me or harass me, but what he failed to recognize is I'm not that type of person that could be done to. I tried your office one day to talk about that, and I never got the phone call back. So
You tried now?
I went to your office. I talked to your secretary. I gave her my phone number. My name is Mike Edinger, and I never got a call back.
How long ago did this mean?
I don't know, it's a while.
I'm sorry to hear about that.
That's right. But all I know...
The door's always open, coming on there.
Well, I came, I announced, the group I'm from, I'm in the GOP, and nothing was done. But I want to know if there's going to be any accountability to that. People are going to look into this. Because everything, it's a white elephant. There are 6 white elephants in this county.
I can't do nothing about the past, but if I hear something in the future, it will be handled properly.
That doesn't help my past.
Well, I'm sorry about the past, I'm sorry you treated that way, but that's not nothing about the past.
Because right now, from what I see, the maintenance here, the gun range expenses are 10% what they spent on almost 10% what they spent on the construction of the range. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money.
I think it takes a little.
No, I think you kind of answered my question. We're going to take a look at it, and so, because, like I said, there's still, employees were traded jobs for votes. That's exactly what happened. And he lost.
I'm sorry about the past, I can do that.
Well, something could be done, I'm sure.
I wasn't making to bring up the past, I'm looking to the future, and I just want to be as honest with the county people as I can.
I know that, but it was criminal activity.
And then I think y'all come tonight. I'll have a good evening. Stay warm.